It's now my distinct pleasure to introduce Ben Rimmer, the newly minted Director General Housing within Treasury in the Australian Government. Welcome. Ben, I'd like to pick up on that last conversation, starting, really at a national lens. What does the Australian Government see? What do you see in terms of the national picture for housing? What do you see as the key priorities?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Can I just start by saying what an amazing way of starting the conference. That was a great panel, great conversation, and such important issues. And so I'd just like to thank Jodie, Shane and Neil for that contribution. A really solid place to start the rest of the proceedings on. And I should say, by the way, I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the Noongar people, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are with us today and who've fought for a fair while to improve housing outcomes for community. It's impressive to see, and there's so much more to do. But look, Michael, you asked a really good question. I mean, where is it? National Housing Conference 2025, time to deliver. Look, the bottom line is, from the perspective of my new role and the Australian Government, we're really in a zone where we're talking about deliver, deliver, deliver. There is lots of new funding out there. There's lots of programs. Some are well underway. Some are just unfolding. There's a new and heightened role for the Commonwealth Government. No doubt we'll talk more about that. So it really is deliver, deliver, deliver. And I've got to be honest with you, the Minister's been very clear with me about my job in that context. And to be honest, that's why I'm doing it. That's an exciting place to be, an exciting time to be in that context. And, I talk about deliver, 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 but really in this context, when we're talking about housing, you can't deliver without a fair whack of collaboration and coordination as well, right? Everyone in this room, apparently there's another conference down the road with another bunch of people that are also important in this, the Property Council, states, territories, local government, all of that is central to delivery. This isn't something that any one jurisdiction can manage on their own. It's not something that any one local government can do on their own. It's not something that any one Aboriginal community-controlled housing organisation can do on their own. It's really about everyone coming together and lifting and learning together and getting stuff done.
Tend to agree with that. And yes, the Property Council conference has kicked off today. We wish them well with their golf day today.
Yeah. It won't surprise those of you in the room who know me that I turned down the golf to spend some time talking about these issues. But look, Michael, the 1.2 million supply target is pretty front and centre for the Commonwealth. There's a lot of talk about that target. It's great to have an aspirational goal to work towards. It's a goal, by the way, it's not just a goal of the Commonwealth. People seem to forget this bit of it. It's a goal that local government signed up to. It's a goal that the superannuation industry signed up to. It's a goal that the property sector signed up to. It's a goal that every single state and territory leader signed up to, alongside the Prime Minister. It really goes to that point about collaboration. We're not going to hit the 1.2 without a lot of work from a lot of different people. And, sometimes people divorce, the kind of conversation about social outcomes from that conversation about supply. But look, the bottom line is, if we have more houses, we'll have less pressure in the rental market, we'll have more ability for people to purchase, we'll have more affordability in both the rental and the purchase kind of segments of the market. There'll be less pressure on the social housing sector because of all of those things. There'll be more opportunity for people to get into the purchase business, including, for example, I'm really interested in, I know IBA and others do a lot of work on this, but the whole connection between Aboriginal community ownership of housing assets as a source of economic empowerment. But all of that comes from supply.
Sure, but one of the things that some governments get criticised for, particularly I guess the political class, is perhaps oversimplifying the challenges and the sense that all we have to do is build our way out of it. It's just a supply issue. That'll solve the affordability challenge. That'll solve all of the problems we have. I suspect it's a little more complex. Can we unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, look, of course it's more complex than that. And, as you've pointed out, it's taken us 30 or 40 years to get into this particular problem. It's going to take us a little bit to get out of it, including a little bit of complexity to work through. There's a lot of work to do in social and affordable housing delivery. There's a lot of work to do in infrastructure for housing. There's things to do right across the spectrum, but whether it's delivery of social homes or delivery of supply generally into the market, I think for now, for right now at this time in the journey to fix some of these challenges, that's really got to be a very, very big objective for us.
I'm conscious that it's 10 years ago this month we last held the National Housing Conference here in Perth. Slightly different context for the federal government at that point. The Commonwealth was denying all involvement in housing, saying it wasn't the Commonwealth's role. That's not the case these days. Things have changed enormously. So let's talk about the breadth of programs that you oversee in your role now.
Yeah, so there's something like 40 separate Commonwealth programs underway at the moment, ranging from rent assistance, which has been a pretty important part of the social welfare system for some time, through to infrastructure programs, through to various forms of programs through Housing Australia in terms of building social and affordable, through to work that we're doing on improving environmental approvals, getting planning systems more effective, getting construction codes more effective. All of that comes together. So, really we're talking about putting pressure on the housing challenge from a very wide range of perspectives simultaneously. A really important part of which is about building social. So when you add up all of the social and affordable housing commitments from the Commonwealth at the moment, it adds up to about 55,000 new dwellings currently in the pipeline, to be funded or already funded. There's an additional 10,000 that the states and territories committed as part of the National Housing Accord, so call that 65,000. In addition, lots of states and territories are continuing their own programs of work. So, one of the differences between now and 10 years ago is, across a number of different jurisdictions, there's really, I don't know, is it too much to describe it as a watershed moment? I feel like there's, we've broken through a period of disinvestment in social housing into a world where there is more concerted investment in social housing. That, there are a number of jurisdictions that have contributed that, but the 55,000 homes from the Commonwealth is a major part of that. There's a bit of, I mean, people read the news. There's been, a bit of talk about HAF and Housing Australia and, those kinds of things. I mean, the reality is there are, nearly 20,000, 25,000 in fact, homes, social affordable homes that are contracted, that are in various stages of delivery, some actually now tenanted, others that will come online next year, others that will come online the year after that. The harsh truth is it takes some time to go from an investment decision, a piece of legislation, a budget decision, through to an actual tenant walking through an actual door. We lived through a bit of that in, I was joking with someone outside, we lived through a bit of that experience in Victoria, the kind of the ministers and the politicians and the media for that matter, are a bit like, well, you've announced these thousands of homes, where are they? And there is actually a little bit of process involved in building them. It takes a while. Yeah. And it's an important process to get right. So that, that's where I think we're at.
Yeah, look, I think you're right about that watershed. I mean, the conference 10 years ago was trying to get governments to take housing more seriously. Now it's everyone's taking it seriously. It's how do you coordinate, how do you have a coherent response? And I guess the consolidation of housing policy within the Commonwealth is a good example of trying to get a more coherent response. Do you want to talk us through what's been happening there?
Yeah, so, I don't know, machinery of government changes can get a bit technical, but the bottom line is these things are solely in the hands of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister thinks about the government's priorities, thinks about how well the Australian Public Service, and there's an equivalent process at a state level, obviously. The Prime Minister thinks about how well the Australian Public Service is set up to deliver on the government's objectives. And depending on the day of the week and who you talk to, the housing ranks pretty highly in the Prime Minister's priority list and in the government's priority list in all its facets, whether that be social affordable, homelessness services, but also obviously the big supply challenges. So really the government after the election came to the view that they wanted much more integration and coordination. They wanted the Minister for Housing to have greater clarity of accountability around the cabinet table. They wanted a senior public servant, that turns out to be me, to have greater clarity of accountability within the public service. So I think I mentioned before the Commonwealth's got close to 40 programs in housing kind of generally. National Indigenous Australians Agency has about 5 of those, which is, an appropriate thing given the significance of the housing challenges there. There's about 4 or 5 that are elsewhere, but the other 30 odd now sit with me and my new team in the Treasury. So that means that we've got everything going on in our tent, from homelessness policy through to the National Construction Code. Takes a particularly weird kind of person that enjoys everything from that right the way along that spectrum. But all of it's important, right? And all of it needs to be thought of as part of one big agenda to improve housing outcomes.
And I guess, structurally your role would typically within Treasury be a DepSec role, a Deputy Secretary role, but your title is Director General. I think that sets a different tone. Is there a message there? Oh,
yeah, probably a bit. I mean, to be honest, I don't much care what they call the job, Michael. I guess I just know that I have a very direct line of accountability to the Minister for Housing. I'm also part of the Treasury team and part of the Treasury Executive Board, and that's also important because so much that happens in Treasury more generally, if you think about the regulation of banks and, financial products that people use to borrow for home, house purchases and those kinds of things, so much of that is relevant to housing issues as well. But to be honest, I'm very clear we've got accountability to support the Housing Minister and deliver on those objectives. you could call that anything and I'd still be pretty excited by the work and by the job. It does, I think, reflect probably a bit of a sense from the government that they're very focused on delivery. They're very focused on coordination across the Commonwealth. So it does have a different nature to it. There's something about that.
And is that what attracted you to the role? I mean, most recently you were DepSec in the Commonwealth Department of Education. Previously you were CEO of Homes Victoria. I'm not going to do your whole CV, don't worry. But earlier you were also CEO of the City of Melbourne. So, you've worked at local government level, you've worked at a state level and previously in the Commonwealth. So it seems to me that this role almost combines the best of each of those previous roles.
Yeah. And look, in earlier days, I've managed to spend a year living and working up in Cape York and hang out in remote communities a bit as well. So there's all of those things come together for me in this role. And look, it's not about me personally; it's more about the role. Like I think part of the Australian government getting serious about housing is the Australian government getting serious about building capability on housing, right from homelessness and, investments in different service models and housing first and those kinds of things, right through into understanding construction innovation and modern methods of construction and those things, understanding social housing delivery, the planning and building systems. All of that is something, that the Commonwealth, it's not like the Commonwealth's trying to do all of those things for the country, like there's other people who have those responsibilities. It's very much a team sport, right? Local governments obviously will play a pretty important role in planning and local community development and in the building system, depending on the state and territory. Community organisations, whether that be ACOs or community housing providers or homelessness service providers, obviously all of those things come together. So yeah, I'm a bit weird, and my life history involves engagement across a range of those different things. But really, the more important thing is we're trying to build new capability and new capacity within the Commonwealth to engage properly on all of those issues. It is the case that the Commonwealth's been heavily involved in housing since 1945, really. One of the first things that Chifley did at the end of 1945 was a housing agreement, the first Commonwealth State housing agreement. The Menzies era continued very heavy Commonwealth involvement, slightly different in nature, but very heavy Commonwealth involvement. So it is something that the Commonwealth's done in the past. It's something that the Commonwealth, I think, needs to do into the future. You don't have a healthy economy without a healthy housing sector. You don't have good social outcomes without a healthy housing sector. You don't have good First Nations outcomes without, Jodie made the point about the closing the gap outcomes and how many of them are underpinned by safe, affordable, accessible, healthy housing. So all of those Commonwealth objectives, even if you think about the Commonwealth's objectives on mental health or on disability, none of those objectives are possible to achieve without an effective housing system that has the Commonwealth playing its role in that system.
Look, thank you, Ben. It's been a fascinating conversation. It's great to have your perspectives as we open up really on a big range of topics over the next couple of days. But I am conscious that if we keep talking, we are preventing all these people from getting to their mini croissants and chicken pies. So after the break, we'll be splitting into three really interesting major concurrent sessions. So do take a moment to work out where you're going to need to be afterwards. In the meantime, please join me in thanking Ben Rimmer, Director General Housing.
Thanks, Mike.